to the good or to the bad that you weren't expecting from outside looking in?
Well, maybe I can start and pass off to Jeff here, but part of the process of deciding that acquiring Airtran was the right thing to do was all this due diligence work. So we actually did 90 days or so of looking at public information, but also meeting the some of the Airtran leaders, talking to them about what they have, how they think about their business, confirming what we thought. So we really got to know them. We got to know their business to the level that you can in terms of what you can talk about and what you can't talk about. So I felt like we learned enough that we wouldn't have significant surprises. After we had a tentative agreement and an agreement, and then went forward with the announcement on the 27th. So from my perspective, I would tell you, based on looking back and working 120 days on the deal, I haven't felt like there were a lot of surprises. If anything, the surprises have been to the upside. So we knew they have great people. The more folks we meet, the more folks I meet personally, I'm just very impressed with the people they have at Airtran. The more we get in and understand how they know their business, run their business, know Atlanta, know their customer base, know the 717s. We've been very, very impressed with all that. Very impressed with their maintenance organization. They're focused on safety. So if anything, I feel like we learned a lot, and if anything, have been positive to the upside in terms of what we learned. But just managing integration, so I'll pass it on.
Yeah, Terry, I think that I would agree with all that. If there's a surprise, I'd say how well we fit for the things that we didn't know about publicly, just in terms of culture and people, history, background. There's such an innovative, scrappy, surviving kind of company. They're what we call here warrior spirit, hard work, innovation, aligns very closely with their background and their history. So that's been, I'd say, a pleasant surprise, just because we didn't have any reason to believe it wouldn't be that way. But it sure is nice to know how close we match in those areas.
Andy, good morning.
Good morning. What can you say? What are you able to talk about then when you're doing the planning right now prior to closing? What are you allowed to talk to them about, and what?
Well, there are obvious limits, and again, I think this more Jeff's, but there are a lot of things that are competitive and competition related. We're still competitors. We have an agreement, but we're not closed. So we don't own anything. We keep saying at this point. So we can't talk about the obvious things. We can't work with them on fares and schedules, and we can't run their business. Now the agreement contains some covenants and some restrictions around ensuring that what we thought at Southwest Airlines, what we thought we were buying when we announced on the 27th of September, is what ultimately shows up whenever we close the transaction. So there are some limited restrictions around how they can spend large amounts of money, for example, how they can commit to debt, for example, but just very basic restrictions around running the business and things that Southwest would have to concur with in order for Airtran to do that. But primarily the items are just commercial, things that we compete against that are commercial, like fares and schedules, that we really can't have a lot of discussion about.
Yeah. And I just add, as independent companies, there's no directing business today. So what we're really doing is planning the future together around non-sensitive areas, again, primarily commercial.
Can you give some examples, like what are the things you're working on? Have you set up teams?
Yeah, we have over 30 teams that have formed, grouped them into 7 different categories, if you will. One of the things that we did in terms of approaching this is that while Bob and the deal team was working on the transaction, Gary had assigned myself and a few others to work on beginning to plan the integration. So we had several months kind of head start on the organizational structure. These 30 teams grouped in 7 categories. Had most of the leaders identified or even plugged in prior to the announcement. Those working teams are pretty standard. I would just characterize them as kind of functional teams. We've got a big group focused on technology, for example, making sure that we move expeditiously towards a single operating certificate. We've got teams around training. And then just like you'd expect, any of the commercial and the headquarters functions and the operations as well. And so, those teams have met. We had a big kickoff last week. I think Beth can maybe help us out. I think locairsfurther.com posted a little bit of an update on our initial kickoff meeting. And that's where we got to meet about 50 AirTran employees that will be also working on those working teams with us. It's off to a really great start. Again, I think right out of the box, our goal was to have that first kickoff meeting to get all the training around what we could and couldn't talk about and how we'd be organized within the first month post-announcement, and we accomplished that. Does that help?
Brett, yes, sir.
I was wondering, Mike, if you could talk a little bit about, what the most important focuses are for bringing the 717 into Southwest. Obviously it changes a lot operationally for you guys. So, what are you really focusing on there, and how are you going to make sure that's a smooth transition?
The 717 for us, actually, I think that'll be fairly. That might be one of the easier parts of the transition because it's a separate airplane type, separate type rating for the pilots, it's a separate maintenance program, and AirTran has shown a pretty good track record of being able to operate and train that airplane. So we'll just probably take most of their practices and try to roll that under our operating certificate, and then at that point in time operate that airplane. So some of the challenges for us on that are mostly just making sure that we get them scheduled into the right locations and that we have the right economics in place at those locations, or similar economics in place that AirTran has at those locations.
Kelly, I think you had.
I was wondering how often you
Kelly, could
plan-
you use the button, please? Sorry.
I was wondering how often the integration teams plan to meet going forward, and are you going to be mostly meeting here, or will you also be meeting in Atlanta?
Oh, yeah. Good question in terms of our meeting cadence and location. We meet here weekly. We have some meetings that meet daily, but at this point, a lot of our working teams have already formed. We did have our kickoff here. I think the next round of meetings are planned for both Atlanta and Orlando. In addition to kind of the governance, again, this is out on the website as well, but we did form a 5-member integration board with executives from both companies. So these two gentlemen, plus Gary Kelly, Bob Fernaro, and Laurel Blendy. And we had our first meeting yesterday with that board to kind of get organized and begin talking about how it's going in the first 30 days. And our next meeting of that group will be actually in Orlando. That's kind of a monthly cadence there. Yeah.
Steve?
To go back to Brett's question, the 717, since in the initial call, the media call, you guys said that you met the 717 to the 735 in capacity. How do you plan on working the 717 into that with the 735 having a longer range and a significantly better fuel burn to begin with?
Well, I think that the 717 is it's got a pretty good trip cost. It's a really good short haul airplane. And the 500s that we have, they're fairly old airplanes, and they're coming off lease. We only have 25 of those, and they're coming off lease in probably the 2013, 14, and 15 time frame. So we need an airplane that if we're going to try to get into smaller market tier level, we need an airplane that has a good trip cost with it, and that airplane is a pretty good short haul airplane, at least so AirTran tells me.
I'm just wondering if you've gotten any feedback from AirTran customers about the deal. Among our own audience, we've gotten a mix of enthusiasm for the deal and a significant number of self-identified business travelers sort of lamenting the loss of some of AirTran's amenities. So just wondering what you've heard from AirTran people.
I think it's like anything. There's a lot, especially at the beginning, there are a lot of unknowns. And so everybody's got to sort of fight their way through the unknowns and just be patient until you make a judgment. And that goes for, I think, customers, employees on both sides. So I think Jeff would tell you as part of the integration, if you think about the employee groups, the AirTran employees, I think the reception has been vastly positive. So very, very, very excited about the the opportunities, excited about growth, excited about Southwest Airlines. But there's also this bit of, well, but there's uncertainty, particularly in light of, well, how's my job at AirTran going to relate to my job at Southwest Airlines? And it just, you never have all the answers day one, particularly on something as complicated as this, and particularly when there are a lot of things we can't do till we close, which is going to be sometime first half of next year. So there's always going to be enthusiasm tempered with some amount of uncertainty. And I think the customer base is the same. The AirTran has a great product. They have great statistics, and they have a large group of very loyal customers. They're loyal to AirTran, and they're looking to make sure that Southwest Airlines is going to perform and provide a customer service experience that is on par or better than what they experience at AirTran. And so until we work our way fully through, how do we think about the differences in the product? How do we think about the differences in schedules? There's going to be, I think, excitement about the fact that Southwest is coming. You just took Atlanta as an example. Southwest is coming to Atlanta, and wow, we have the potential to add 24 new destinations out of Atlanta that AirTran doesn't serve. That's a very exciting thing. But there may be something I like as a customer about AirTran, like the obvious examples are assigned seating and business class, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, because they may or may not be familiar with our boarding process. They may or may not be familiar with Business Select, which is a fantastic product. And so some of this we're just going to have to give it, we're just going to have to give it time. It's going to evolve over time, both in terms of what we choose to do in terms of managing the differences, and then how customers relate to that. But I think I really believe that just the fact that we have I believe a fantastic brand, a fantastic story, which is proven out by the fact that we've seen a lot of share shift come to Southwest Airlines. We got a lot of positives like Bags Fly Free that will over time obviously be integrated into the AirTran brand. And so I feel very comfortable about our ability to win over the AirTran passengers.